Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is a moment in time. I'm Albert. This is Alex right over here.
That is indeed me. That is my name.
Today, we are going to be talking about a film that took place several decades ago. It is called Wargames. I don't remember exactly when this movie came out.
I think it was like 83, I think.
That is very possible.
Yeah, we watched it like 3 weeks ago at this point. We were planning on watching it and then like doing the podcast a couple days later, but then that just didn't work out. So
yeah,
we're coming at this like 3 weeks after we watched it now.
Yeah,
so,
we're a little late, but that's okay.
And it's the holiday season. Like you see, I even got even though it's not the first yet, I got the advent calendar there ready to go. It's sitting up on the top there. It's ready to go once the first hits.
Yep. That is true.
And I got on my desk. Oh, shit.
I have an advent calendar as well.
I got the Christmas tree on my desk too. The Mario one. And look, I got the...
Nice.
I got the... My room's stripped out. I'm ready.
Uh-huh.
I'm ready to get free stuff on the 25th of December.
Right. I just realized I didn't move my Notion off of the same screen, so just close your eyes, everyone, real quick. There we go.
Didn't happen.
So I guess first off, we can go over a bit about what this movie was about, and then kind of dive a little bit deeper from there.
It was definitely an experience. I will say that. That's my review. It definitely, like, I know, like I said when we watched it, was like definitely for the time I could see why it was important, but just watching it now, I'm like, this movie's just like kind of bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty goofy.
It's like a so bad it's good kind of movie to me. I feel like it's
I mean, it was enjoyable. I'm glad we watched it. It was
fun. It was definitely entertaining.
Yeah, and
I'll give it that much.
We laughed throughout majority of that movie, like a good amount of it. And yeah. I mean, for no spoilers, real quick. I mean, it was really funny. You don't have
I don't
to
know
take
if it was
this...
intended to be funny though.
It wasn't intended to be funny, but it was funny from a modern context to watch this movie back.
Yes.
And so I would say, like, if you just want to have a good time with your friends, definitely check it out. Have fun. The characters are kind of insufferable, especially like the main character and his love interest. And actually, you know what? Everyone in this movie is
everybody was like a terrible person
stupid.
Or like an idiot.
Yeah.
That was like the two groups of people.
Yeah.
It was either a terrible person or an idiot.
Yeah, I agree. The characters themselves are kind of like, what is wrong with these people? Are they like missing brain cells? I don't really know.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah,
like it definitely felt like they wanted to make a movie about how scary like technology is, but like didn't do enough of the appropriate research to actually get a grasp on it. It felt like
so reminder, at this time, I think it was like just before, right around the time that the first laptops were being released to the public. So it's not really surprising that this wasn't like, it's not like everyone had a personal computer to begin with. So the problems were very much more in line with what they were talking about here, which is cybersecurity as a field didn't exist yet.
Yeah. And
on top of that, it was kind of like, well, computers are only really used by maybe universities and the military or the government, right?
Yeah, like it kind of feels like it. I guess maybe what I said wasn't the right way to word it, but I mean, it's more like to me, it feels like it comes more across as like a science fiction film than like a realistic drama.
Yes, and I think
it feels like it was like a exaggerated version of of what they thought would happen.
Right.
More so than the reality.
Part of that is probably because we've always grown up with modern standards of cybersecurity, and sure, they've grown in the last 20 years as well.
Of course.
But we have never had computers without like firewalls or basic cybersecurity really in the picture. We may not have known about it as kids, but it was definitely like a part of the process where you would have antivirus software and things like that existed.
Yep.
At that time, it didn't exist, right? These weren't things that existed at that time. So, I mean, it's very much a movie that is a product of its time.
Oh, of course, 100%.
I mean, you'll tell right away they have dial-up internet and stuff like that. So that's like the type of computing or age that we're looking at. So I would say, if you want to take a dive back into the past and see what the public perceptions were of computers to start with, and also like the film that basically, in essence, created a lot of the foundation for cybersecurity.
Like, it's like, when you really think about it, it's like personal computers weren't even really like a thing yet.
Yeah.
For the most part, so it's like one of those things where it was very like right on the cusp of what was about to become reality, kind of. It's like it was like just barely like on the realm of possibility at that time. It felt like it was not, it would have been like even if the movie was made like 5 years later, it would have probably been completely different.
Yeah.
Just even in like a short amount of time like that, just after like, if you're talking like the difference between 83 and 88, by that point, everybody was starting to really get computers in their house.
Yeah.
The internet would be coming around like in a couple of years, so it's like there's a big difference just between that like 5-year time period. Really, changes how I think the movie would have been made.
Yep. Yeah, like one of the articles that I looked into was like the public internet providers didn't exist yet at the time of filming, and they didn't even exist when some of the policies that resulted from this movie, when they existed, it still didn't exist. Like there was no internet at that time.
Yeah, I feel like that was definitely like I guess more like widespread adoption wasn't even until like the early 90s, I feel like, or even like late 80s.
Yeah.
Like, so like even the fact that this kid had in 80, I guess, in 83, he had not only his own phone, he had his own phone line just for dial-up internet. Must have been like crazy. Like nobody was like, what is this? No, we don't. This is like these kids living in the future.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a rarity at that time.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I will say I don't think they ever explained how he has his own computer system just in his room. Like I presumed that
his parents must have been rich, but they didn't seem like it. I mean, they were in like 2 scenes of the entire movie, to be fair, with the dad doing that super gross thing with the corn. I don't know if you remember what he did with the corn.
What was he doing with the corn?
That he buttered the piece of bread and then like took the bread and just rolled the corn into bread. We were just like, what is happening here? That's like all I remember about the parents, is that the dad was a weirdo with the corn. Actually, no, wait, they were both weirdos with the corn.
Yeah.
Because didn't the mom undercook it? And she's like, I like it raw.
Oh,
and I was like, what are you
doing
these psychos?
Yeah.
They're both psychotic when it comes to corn.
Yeah.
That's all I remember about the parents. Like, I don't think they ever mentioned if they were, I mean, obviously they must have been some type of wealthy if this kid had his own computer and his own phone line, but like all we know is that they are weirdos when it comes to eating corn.
I agree. I remember that now. Yeah, as soon as you explained that, I got the visual back in my brain of
I can't forget
that happening.
That was like kind of scarring. That was kind of scarring.
I think I had kind of blocked it out until you brought it back to the forefront of my mind.
I don't blame you. I've never seen any human being do that before.
Yeah.
If you were alive in 1983, comment below if you did that with your corn. Because I want to know if that was just a process of the time. Is you butter a piece of bread and then take the corn and then rub it in the bread.
Yeah.
Like instead of just buttering the corn.
Also, watch the movie. It's enjoyable. In a kind of ironic, but also kind of not way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But moving forward, we're going to jump into spoilers definitely now. So like, if you haven't watched the movie, you want to watch the movie, maybe go watch it and come back. That's up to you. But continue at your own risk. That being said, in terms of the actual overarching story, right? Just a brief synopsis is this character who's I don't remember any of the character names.
I was gonna say, do you even remember his name?
No, I don't remember the names, so this is gonna be very vague. But I'm just gonna say the main character.
I'll look it up for you right now.
Yeah, sure. The main character, he is in school. He's like a high schooler or something, and for whatever reason, he's like really good with computers. Probably just does that all in his time, in his free time, instead of doing his actual schoolwork, which is why he's doing poorly in school. They start off with him bringing a girl home and like showing her that he can change his grades in the school system by connecting to their phone number and everything like that, which is how dial-up internet used to be in order to connect to another system.
Was the main character's name. David Lightman.
Yeah, David Lightman. So in order for David to connect to the school network, he just has to like call their phone number, and I think it like links to their computers directly. I don't know if there was a specific porting system to specify like phone versus internet back in that day, but if there was, they probably had to do that too. But that's kind of how it starts to show, okay, this dude is able to access like computers directly. He knows what he has some level of technology.
He changes his grades. He changes the girl's grade even though she didn't want him to.
He does.
Ooh.
Yeah. And there's this whole B
drama.
Yeah, there's the whole B plot with the romance as well in the movie. And from there, he decides to just, or actually, no, he hears about a company that's designing games that'll be released in like months from now, right?
Yep.
And he wants to be able to access them early, so he is trying to access that company's computers remotely through, I believe it's called demon dialing. From when I looked it up.
Was that what that's called?
Yeah, demon dialing.
Demon dialing. That's kind of an intense name for something. To name that. Demon dialing.
Yeah. Anyway, he ends up accessing NORAD by accident, and he's kind of an idiot, so he thinks that playing thermonuclear war is just another game, you know, and he
like the list on the computer literally went like, what was that? There was like chess, baccarat, Go, thermonuclear warfare.
Yeah,
and he was like,
we're playing that one.
We're playing that one.
I've never heard that before.
I mean, granted, to be fair, that does sound like the most exciting of those 4 options.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one too, but
yeah. And then this simulation's running. It's basically going to cause the next World War III because the U.S. government doesn't understand that it is a simulation that's being run. So they're arming themselves, and then the Russians are denying everything because the thermonuclear war is between
DEFCON
Russia
1
and
at
the
some
US.
point.
Yeah. And so then the Russians are responding, being like, we're not the ones that are pointing nukes. You are. Now we're going to probably arm ourselves too. And so it's just kind of escalating throughout the movie.
Yep.
There's like a whole plot where the guy who created NORAD faked his death.
Also a weirdo.
And also wants the world to die.
And then that gets resolved in about like 3 minutes after that happens.
Yep. So
he's like, yeah, I want the world to die. And then they go outside and they're like, oh, I guess we're gonna die. And then they kiss. And then he pulls up in a helicopter. It's like,
yeah,
I changed my mind. That happens like all in the span of like 3 minutes.
Yeah. But the crux of the issue is, well, this random dude was somehow able to access NORAD's government systems, potentially putting the world into thermonuclear warfare by the end of the movie. So, yeah, that's the main plot. I will say the movie is fairly ridiculous because the characters are stupid.
It was some of the dumbest characters I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Consistently, every single one. I don't think there's a single person that was intelligent.
Yeah, like everyone is. Yeah, go ahead.
Like, you know, between David being like, "Oh, I want to play some thermonuclear warfare," to the doctor Stephen Falcon being like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna put a back door into NORAD and just hope nobody ever finds it."
Yeah.
And then when somebody finds, he's like, not my fault. We're meant to die.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Exactly.
You know, and then like everybody at NORAD just being not checking the computer to see if it's running a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it was kind of insane just how for everything that happened, it required everybody to be extremely stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So I mean, the big thing there is like a lot of hard-headed people in the adults side of things that are like, oh, clearly we all know what's going on, when none of them actually do. And then the bumbling, stupid child that can't sit down for 2 minutes and have a real conversation about what's going on.
He tries to hack into the system while literally sitting in like the chief head of NORAD's office.
Yeah.
Like they sit him down, the CEI's there, and he's just like, no, there's a computer there. And he's like, bro, are you not in no trouble are you not in no trouble already?
Yeah. So that's all kind of insane, but
yeah. And then I just wanted to say too, like at the end, the movie does like the weird thing where it's like they solve the problem, and then out of nowhere, it's just like, we're gonna just like keep the movie going on for like another 5 minutes and just have it play tic-tac-toe until it explodes. Like even after the issue was already resolved, which like made like no sense to me. Like why did the computer like suddenly just goes rogue? Like the whole thing was that like it just wanted to play the game, and then it loses the game, and it's like, okay, let's do it for real, and then just tries to like set off all the nukes out of nowhere. And it seems like, I mean, I guess the computer's not a character, but it did seem kind of out of character for the computer.
Yeah, I think it was kind of funny, but the way that they ended it was kind of like, oh, you're basically overloading the computer by making it try to solve an unsolvable game, right?
Yeah.
And so I understood how they ended it, but I was like,
but they did that the first time with the thermonuclear warfare. It was like they did the same thing twice.
Yeah, it wasn't really
like you could have just had it overload from the thermonuclear warfare and blow up, and the movie could have ended. I don't know. The tic-tac-toe thing seems unnecessary to me at the end.
They could have just waited until the simulation ended, I believe, right? And then they realized, well, oh, this was actually a simulation, right? Isn't that what happened?
No, because what happens is that when they through the simulation. Like the simulation doesn't like end. It only ends because it does like goes through like every possible the list of like every possible like attack option it has, and just none of them work. And it literally so it loses the game. And like it literally causes the same problem that it did with the tic-tac-toe, where it couldn't beat the unsolvable game. And then it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna kill us all.
Yeah.
And just launch the nukes for real. And then they have to play tic-tac-toe, and then they have to lose another unsolvable game. Only the second time it blows up. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think it was, again, product of its time. I think the movie is it is ridiculous, but it also goes to show like what we kind of take for granted as
for sure.
our cybersecurity or our security systems that we have in place in the modern day, because they just wouldn't have existed 50 years ago, right?
Yeah, like I know I am kind of ripping on it, but I do I mean, it was still enjoyable. Like I know I'm like ripping into it, but like just because I thought all this weird crazy stuff that happened was funny.
Yeah, I think that, you know, of course modern day wouldn't be the same situation, but if you had like the knowledge of the modern day and rewrote the movie, maybe there'd be a little bit changes. I would say also like the characters would probably be a little bit more intelligent, like just a tad, you know.
That's the thing that honestly, like as much as I'm ripping it, that's probably like the one thing that I'll actually give it like a knock against this movie. That everybody's supposed to be really smart, except they're just really stupid.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, what's even the point?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, where I'm like, okay, you have this super smart kid, but he's stupid, and
you have this super smart doctor who invented NORAD, but he's stupid.
well, that one I kind of understood, like the nihilism. I think they said he lost his kid or something.
Well, I get that, but I mean, he was stupid for him to put the stupid part is him putting the back door into NORAD.
So I think that was actually commonplace. That was a commonplace thing that developers would do. They would always build back doors into their software so that they could always regain access. It wasn't necessarily like ethical, right?
No,
but it was a commonplace.
Was that
thing.
a more common practice? Okay.
Yeah, it was a way to circumvent all security, basically, and so that you could just continue to gain access to your software. I mean, I think one of the things that this would be associated with was like, you know, if you do a task and for whatever reason they refuse to pay you or something like that, like then you can prevent access from other people.
I guess
stuff like that. There were like certain reasons as to why you would have like a backdoor in the system that you're writing. It's not really an ethical practice as far as I could tell, beyond like maybe wanting to protect yourself. But I think ultimately the best idea is to, if you're gonna have something like that, only have something like that up until like you exchange goods and services.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you provide them with that final version of software where there's no
you remove the back door,
because you don't want to then be responsible for that. Like you're opening yourself up not only to a bunch of lawsuits, but that is again a huge ethical quandary of like, should you really be doing that? Probably not.
No.
Okay, so in terms of the actual implications of this film, right? I think the biggest thing is, of course, the fact that Ronald Reagan watched this movie, to me, is really funny, because it's just really funny, because I think I had sent you this article, but they talk about how months before this he had a conference or a conversation with his like cabinet or whatever about Star Wars and making like laser beams.
That's the thing that he actually wanted to do was Star Wars, like a bunch of like satellites and stuff in space to protect like a global defense system. We called it Star Wars. And to
prevent against other countries from attacking from space as well. So that to me I found very, very funny, that it literally says in the article that we were reading that the other people around him thought he was like a quack for basically suggesting that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, because like that's still a little bit far out there, right? But this movie, I think it was kind of like perfect storm in terms of timing, where it actually did highlight certain things that were problematic to a smaller degree in this current age, but would become very important later on.
I mean, the same thing is just happening again too. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but like Mission Impossible, right? Heard of those movies?
Yeah, I've heard of those movies.
The newest one that came out this summer, the whole thing is about a rogue AI that is trying to destroy the world.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah, and then it's basically the same thing that happened with Ronald Reagan in this movie. Joe Biden saw the new Mission Impossible with the rogue AI, and he's like, this AI seems like it might be a problem. And now he's like signing in restrictions on AI into law because of the movie. So it's almost like that weird like history repeats itself
right
kind of scenario where like it's almost like the same thing. Like Wargames, it came out like in '83, where it was like right on the cusp of like the personal computer becoming commonplace and everything. And now we have Mission Impossible. I think it's 7. Mission Impossible 7 comes out 2023, right on the cusp of AI becoming commonplace in the homes and stuff, with ChatGPT and everything.
Right.
So it's just kind of interesting that again, it's basically a history repeats itself moment, kind of. Where the president just happens to watch a movie and he's like, I think this is an issue. Yeah. Maybe I should do something about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had no idea about that. I hadn't heard about that. Did that movie?
This is a good movie. You should watch it. It was a good movie.
When
Mission
did the
Impossible
movie come out?
Like in the summer, I think.
Okay.
Like July or something, June, July. It was a summer blockbuster. They come out like one every weekend. I don't remember what weekend it was.
That is really cool. I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know. Maybe I'll have to check that out at some point.
Yeah, it's about like the main antagonist of that movie. Well, the main antagonist is trying to like protect the rogue AI that is trying to like destroy the world, basically.
Yeah.
But
I find
you don't need to watch any of the other ones to understand what goes on in this one. Just that Tom Cruise is like a secret agent, and he has a love interest, and he's an action hero. What else do you know?
Yeah. It's also interesting, like the response. I think the person was called General Vesey or whatever. That
the character in the movie?
No, the person that Reagan spoke to after.
Oh, okay.
He basically was told, okay, figure out if this is actually a problem after watching the movie, right? And the general came back and was literally like, the problem is much worse than you think. And I'm like, it's worse than the movie. That's the kind of funniest thing.
That is concerning to say.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for everyone's knowledge that's listening, the result of this was the National Policy on Telecommunications and Automated Information Systems Security. Its short form is NSDD-145, or the National Security Decision Directive. So this is pretty cool because within just over a year, it's 15 months later, the policies were put in place based off of this film. So to me, I'm like, this film is super goofy. It's really insane, though, the amount of impact that it had within such a short period of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I imagine, like watch it like 40 years when people go watch the Mission Impossible movie, they're basically saying the same thing we're saying about this movie now. Like they were idiots.
yeah, I agree.
When it comes to AI, but it's like, when you look at it in the context of that, it's like we didn't know any better and they didn't know any better. Like they were just talking about something that might potentially happen, but that really is interesting to think about.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts on the Reagan situation here?
No, I mean, I think overall, obviously, I think it was a good thing that he did that. It was good, always good to be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
I think so. The fact that he was willing to, jump on the gun and get ahead of it, like you said, especially even before like the internet was commonplace, I think was definitely a good thing. Because if you waited until imagine like something like that didn't get passed until after the internet was a thing, like it would be like a whole other like can of worms that you're trying to bring that back into disaster that would have caused. So, like I say, I always think being proactive is better than being reactive. So I think it was definitely a good call.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really know anything about like Ronald Reagan specifically. I've heard his name before as a president, but like I've never actually been a huge history buff. So
I don't want to make it political, but like most people consider him not to be a very good president for a myriad of reasons. So
yeah, I believe, isn't he considered to be, he was like corrupt in some way or shape or form? I think that was
it was something like that. And then like there was like the whole the CIA was like implanting drugs in underprivileged racial neighborhoods, blah blah blah, whatever.
Gotcha.
I don't know too much either. Like I know a little bit, but I don't know enough to talk about it and then post on the internet and think I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna leave it at that. I just know that people are not a big fan of him.
Gotcha. So, yeah, I'll have to do some research into that later on at some point. But this whole movie overall, it just made me want to learn more about the history of different technologies, I think, either through film media or...
And it could be interesting because a lot of today we just take for granted. It'd be interesting to know what led it to where it becomes now. Like you just like we were saying, like you were saying before, like we just take our cybersecurity for granted. Like our computers just come with firewalls.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Like and stuff like that. That we just wanted that weren't even like a thing that was like not even a concept when this movie came out.
Yeah.
So just to see where people were and where we are now, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So the next topic that I wanted to discuss in relation to this film was the whole demon dialing situation. So in the film, they show this by like just having the monitor show like all the different IPs that they're trying, or phone numbers, I guess, at the time that they're trying to connect to. So what this actually is like a telephone modem searching for other modems by automatically dialing each phone number in a particular area code, right? And the way that he does this is because he knows the location of the
game store,
the game company or whatever,
right? Yeah.
And it just so happens to also be near
where NORAD is.
Yeah, where that particular military base would be, same area code. And so they're basically just letting it ring a couple times before proceeding to the next number. And what happens is if the modem that you're actually trying to call answers you, there is like a squawking sound, so like that like ringing sound that you hear,
like the classic like dial up sounds, whatever.
Yeah, and then when that happens, the software that's doing the dialing will then record that phone number so that the hacker or the person that controls the computer can come back to that phone number later on, because they know there's a connection that can be made there. I was surprised that this was an actual thing, but it makes.
I was surprised too. I remember my mind was kind of blown when we were watching the movie. I remember asking you, like, is this a thing you could do? You could just call a number and put the thing down, and you could just get into a system. It's crazy to think like we were saying, like, we take cybersecurity for granted, like something like that was just that easy. You just call a phone number, and then you're just in. Like,
I mean,
something like that was crazy to think about.
Yeah, there's actually an equivalent to that in the modern age, which I found out about because I've been watching like some of the cybersecurity lectures from like the CS50 courses that are online on like EDX, and this to me rings very close to port scanning, which is when a hacker will listen into all the different ports on a particular IP address for a computer.
Yeah.
And then through that process, they'll understand like inputs, outputs, the type of information that's being passed through to try and understand what's going on. For us, right, port 80, I had looked this up. Port 80 is like your baseline internet, HTTPS.
Yeah.
Or HTTP, I think, and then HTTPS is a different port as well. But if you don't like mask it or change the ports, right, you could just directly look at someone's port 80 and then see their internet traffic, like
see what they're doing on the internet.
But that the reason we have things like firewalls, encryption, things like that, or like tokenization and all of these different concepts, is so that even if someone is watching something like that, they can't read what we're doing and they won't be able to communicate with us with something that passes through, because they haven't actually gotten the correct formatting that the machine's expecting, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or they don't know how to decode that information that they're reading. So very similar in terms of something that's still possible today.
It's just way harder.
Yeah, and we have all of these other things through encryption, cybersecurity, this whole field that is meant to prevent that from actually happening in a feasible manner, right? I believe it's like once you get to a certain amount of complexity in certain things, like it's too much work for a computer to feasibly work through to find a solution in a meaningful amount of time without it no longer being relevant, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that I found quite interesting, that there is an equivalent that still exists today, but I think that's precisely one of the reasons why we have firewalls and all these other things now that exist. So I just wanted to mention that, like, yes, this does exist, even though it's very insane to think about in the movie. I just found that wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're even working on ways to prevent that, these days too. Now, like the job I'm working at now, it's kind of been, it's like, I say cybersecurity adjacent, I would say. It involves like cybersecurity, like technologies, but like they're working on like new like zero trust networks and stuff that it could, so like if you connect via like SSH, you know, that's speaking of ports, that's port 22.
Yeah.
On a router, right? But like these technology, these zero trust networks are basically working on making encrypted tunnels so you can get things like SSH networks without having that port open and exposed. So that would even make like you know, like you were saying, like the port scanning even harder to do because you can't really scan the port if the port's not even open to begin with.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm still very much a novice in the world of cybersecurity. Like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take this class, but it's just been very slow going because like trying to take a class when you're not actually taking a class is kind of like it's difficult to get yourself to sit down for like a 3-hour lecture to like listen to something like that.
Well, I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid to learn about it. So
that's the way to go about it, you know. Get paid to learn useful information. Yeah, but I mean, alternatively, like some of the alternatives to this, right, to prevent things like this, don't be on the internet, man. Just don't use the internet.
I mean, like I feel like that is such like an easy thing to say. Just don't be on the internet. But the world nowadays is so connected to the internet.
Yeah,
if you're not on the internet at least a little bit, I don't honestly know how you're functioning.
Yeah.
Also, so much of what you do involves having to be connected to the internet or like some type of network in some way.
Yeah.
Like most things require some type of connection.
Yeah. I also think that with the wide usage of personal computing, right, it's also increased the importance of a lot of this because things like, you know, someone hacking into your computer 50 years ago, or I guess in the 80s or whatever, which would be like 40 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, right, that wasn't as big a deal because it's not like you were storing your whole life on a computer. But now it's like, well, your bank transactions are on computers of some kind. It could be your phone more likely, but like your computers, a computing system of some kind can access all of that stuff. Social media, email, like all of these things are on the internet and they all require communication through the internet. These aren't things that are just sitting locally on your computer. And we also have file systems just on our system,
like the cloud and everything. Like people just store, you know, their entire life on the cloud.
Yeah, and so as soon as someone is able to like read that information, or even worse, read on what's on your specific computer, everything about you or most of the things that you have out there that you don't really keep close to the vest anymore are utilizable by anyone. And that could be used by bad actors, not only just to like find information about you. You know, maybe one of the most mundane versions of that would be selling your data to like a company that's going to give you ads, right?
Yeah, that's
pretty harmless, but like still you don't really want that, and you kind of opt in for that with most of the sites that you visit nowadays anyway. But even more maliciously, well, they can now use that information. Maybe they find something on your computer and they're like, oh, okay, this person is from this location, they have these interests, they know these people. And so now, especially with the advent of AI, you say you create a generative model for someone's voice, right? And you're like, okay, this person knows this person, create a model off this person's voice based off of any data that we have off of them, make them think it's that person, get them to give you money, stuff like that, right? So the biggest thing is like phishing, blackmail, stuff like that are like the big issues where it's like, these are the things that are why it's very important. You also just don't necessarily want that information leaked in general, right? It might not be something that's particularly harmful to you, but like you don't necessarily want to. You still
feel, you know, violated that your information is being looked at like that, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's like no different from like if somebody like broke into your house but didn't steal anything of value to you. It's like you're still like, someone I don't know was in my house. I don't feel safe in my house.
Yeah.
You know, that's the same thing with, you know, your data on the internet. It's like you could, even if they didn't take something important, it's like somebody was here, they could have seen everything about my life. I don't feel comfortable about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's very true. And the only other point that I had here was just saying that like Mr. Ware, who is this guy that worked on the real NORAD computer, he was actually consulted about the film. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
Lived near, I think the people that wrote the film like met up with him or whatever and asked him about the feasibility of demon dialing specifically and if this was possible, and he was like, yep, this is very possible. And at that time we didn't really have VPNs, right? So
I wouldn't think so.
I don't think we had VPNs, but he was saying
VPNs are definitely like a newer technology. I think I'm gonna double check that because now I'm curious.
Yeah, if you could check that, that'd be great. But he was saying that even at that time, people would work from home, from the military base, and so they'd be connecting to NORAD remotely.
Through
this was very possible. Yeah, through dial-up. So this was very possible at that time to connect to the system.
That's kind of scary to think.
Yeah.
Like imagine like they just had like that phone number written down like on like a piece of paper or something. Somebody just walked in the house and just saw it, and then like went home and was just like, yeah, I'm gonna connect to that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the film, they did have some security measures there. Like, do you remember that? Yeah. Like they did, and it took the main character some time before he could access
get in. Because once he figured out, we had to just figure out what the back door was.
Yeah. Well, it was finding information about like the username and what the password would be, right? For that initial creator, like the fake creator that they had in the movie. So there's still obviously going to be like passwords. I think at the time were still a thing, but they weren't as complicated as they are now. It was like,
and also I just looked it up. VPN technology was first used in 1996 when a Microsoft employee developed the PPTP. I guess that's some protocol.
Okay.
I don't know what the PPPT, whatever the PP. You couldn't name this something easier to say. The PPTP. Let's look that up now. PPTP. The point-to-point tunneling protocol. There you go.
Okay.
Operating on TCP port 1723 is one of the oldest VPN protocols still in use, having been around since Windows 95 and standard on all Windows versions since.
Okay, that might be related to TCP/IP then, right? Because I think I've heard that as an acronym before. Because I was like, PP. What did you say? PPT. PPT.
PPTP.
Okay. Yeah. Because my brain automatically was like, what is anything that I've heard that's similar to that? And I was thinking like TCP/IP, but I don't actually know what that is. So I guess
they really could have named these things, give these things better names. PPTP. The protocol created a more secure and private connection between a user device and the internet. In 1999, the specification was published. In the early 2000s, VPNs are mostly associated with and used by businesses. Blah 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 blah. Around 2017, internet users in the United States learned that ISPs could collect and sell their browsing history, and net neutrality became a concept citizens had to fight for and effectively lost. Blah blah blah. Since then, different states have enacted versions of net neutrality laws with this knowledge. The use of VPNs has become a more legitimate need for individuals. There you go. That's all they have written up on the history.
You read that very quickly, but sure.
Oh, basically, when net neutrality went away, people were like, "Uh-oh!" And when people found out their data was being used, they were like, "Double uh-oh!" And then they started using VPNs more outside of businesses.
Gotcha. Very cool.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Comment below if you understood me when I was talking before.
I think you were very, very quick with your words.
We gotta get that. We gotta get that in those engagements. Comment below if you think Albert is wrong and I was not quick with my words. Like this video if I've talked slow enough for you.
Or just like the video in general. You know, that'd be nice too.
Subscribe to the Albert channel.
Mm-hmm.
the Albcast channel.
Yeah, I will say I do want to have more conversations surrounding cybersecurity specifically because it's something that I think is pretty cool. And like, I think that one of the next topics that I want to talk about is the first worm that ever was created. I recently read part of this book. This book is called, I think it's Fancy Bear Goes Fishing. Yeah. And it's about like a bunch of different big hacks that have existed in the
interesting title to give to that book.
Yeah. And the first chunk of the book is about the first worm that was ever created. So stay tuned for that. I think that's going to be probably the next topic in line for that. And I'm very excited to talk about that because I found that super fascinating. We could probably get into the weeds of some of the technological aspects of that too, because they actually go over some of the elements there of how this worm was created and how it infected a bunch of people. So yeah, that's probably going to be the next topic.
Could be interesting to talk about for sure.
Yeah. That being said, did you have anything else, or I think we can potentially end off for today?
No, I didn't have anything else. I mean, I could give you my OMG fact of the day.
You know what? Let's do
my OMG fact of the day calendar.
Yeah.
The OMG fact for Wednesday, November 29, 2023 is more than 52 million tons of paper products were recycled in 2018. That's roughly the same weight as 350,000 blue whales. Every Sunday, the United States wastes nearly 90% of the recyclable newspapers. This wastes about 500,000 trees. That's kind of like a 2-for-1 day. I don't know why those are on the same day. Those sound like that's kind of like two separate facts, but I mean, we recycled 350,000 blue whales, but lose about 500,000 trees. So
I guess, yeah.
Does it balance out? I don't know. Probably not.
Just replant, please. That's all I'll say. All right, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are about this film. Have you watched it? What are your thoughts? Do you think it's really goofy? Did you find it interesting? Like, what are your thoughts there? Please let us know. Is there
comment below? Give us that engagement so the algorithm loves us. Let's get this video to #1 on trending. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to. I don't know where I am on the screen compared to Albert, but subscribe to that man that I'm presumably pointing to. And thanks for watching, I guess.
All right. Bye.
Bye.